Hi guys, my name is Marissa, and for my persuasive speech, I'm going to be talking about breed-specific legislation. Now, for breed-specific legislation, I'm sure you guys have heard some things about it, especially my animal lovers out there. However, this is really detrimental to large dog breeds specifically, or dangerously deemed dog breeds. For example, I have a German Shepherd, and I had been having some health issues the last couple months, and I was in the hospital on and off. I had to find a new housing situation, and it was very hard. My German Shepherd is a really, really good dog. She's well behaved. She gets along with cats, all other animals. However, in places where German Shepherds are not allowed, I am not allowed because my dog is not. In addition, when I was in the hospital, I had to find some boarding for her. I could not bring her with me. And it was really hard to find a cost-effective place because, mind you, I am off work, I am in the hospital, and additionally, it's like an extra $50 a night just for a German Shepherd where I was looking. Luckily, I figured it out. My mom was able to help me, my family members, and all of those great things. I'm very thankful for that. However, it is very hard for those that don't have those options. Some people do not have the family to look after their animals. They don't have the resources, etc. So I was lucky. I lucked out in my situation, but not everybody does. So just a couple things about breed-specific legislation. It is based upon the appearance in the dog breed. So, for example, a German Shepherd would be deemed as aggressive, so they would not be able to be allowed. It was someone that is following breed-specific legislations, whereas like a Chihuahua would. However, on the other hand, there is something called breed-neutral legislation, which I'm not going to get into a lot, which is actually more common, and people kind of confuse it with breed-specific legislation. However, breed-neutral legislation deems every single dog potentially dangerous rather than looking at the DNA factors and the appearance of dogs. So that's kind of the difference between them. It is ineffective to use breed-specific legislation, they say, because you can't really deem someone or an animal dangerous without going into further detail. For example, that would be looking at a person in the street and saying, oh, they're dangerous, without going into the further background as far as a background check, etc. So they do kind of compare it, and a lot of the articles I was reading is they compare it to a background check as hiring an employee when they are allowing dogs to come enter their home. Now for me, it is even a little different situation because my German Shepherd is my emotional support animal. I went and furthered the steps so I cannot be discriminated upon. However, when I am boarding, I still can get the fees as a discrimination fee for my animal since she is indeed dangerous. She's not, but in the specific legislation of breed-specific legislation, she is deemed dangerous. Whether I like it or not, or whether she actually is dangerous, she does fall into that category, and that is something that owners need to think about when getting an animal. So like I said, my personal experience, I've been directly affected with housing, not so much now since she is a registered support animal, but before she was registered, I had many housing issues. I couldn't go to the apartments I wanted to. I had trouble finding housing, so I did end up living back with my mom after I was out on my own for a couple years, which is obviously not the best situation, but I make things work. So housing is very hard, not only for me, but for other people. If people can't seem to find the correct housing, it does find some things get complicated. Sometimes animals end up back in the shelter, and the euthanization rates are higher for large dog breeds due to the fact that some people just simply will not adopt a large dog, not because they're scared. Sometimes people are scared of larger dog breeds, but additionally, sometimes people just cannot have them in their housing. Like I mentioned, apartment restrictions. Everybody knows that some places do have restrictions on animals, whether it be cats or dogs, just animals in general. However, I want to talk about the pros and cons of breed-specific legislation because there are some good things that do come out of it. For example, people believe that it provides a safer environment for not only people around but also animals. If there are aggressive dogs around, it does create a lot of commotion. If there are aggressive dogs around, it can create commotion, like I said, with people or animals. Sometimes animals will act out different ways around other animals, and they will go after even humans. So it says that it provides a safer environment for everybody, along with it discourages dog fighting. I know that dog fighting has been kind of dwindling away, and we've been hearing less of it, but it is still common. They say that the breed-specific legislation in areas disallow for fighting. For example, if pit bulls are not allowed in a community, they expect to see less dog fighting between pit bulls. However, you have to think that we still have these animals, and you have to think that we have to do something with these animals. We can't just pretend they don't exist and also just take them out of the picture. In my opinion, I think that you need to also provide adequate housing for these animals, not rather just saying this community does not allow for them. In addition, it does allow dangers to not be there, not be present. There are dangers with animals. Sometimes animals are dangerous. They do have dangerous bloodlines. You have to be careful. You have to adequately train your animal. So that there are some things that help with the breed-specific legislation with animals that are not trained. However, you can't just look at a dog and decide it is not trained. There is temperament issues and things that go into it. On the other side, the cons are that it is expensive to enforce. Breed-specific legislation is expensive. It is very hard to DNA test every single animal and decide, oh, this is it. Or even just looking at an animal. Some animals look like they're German Shepherds and they are completely different mutts. They're mutts and you just can't tell the difference. So it's very hard to enforce, and there could be wrongful discrimination, as I mentioned, like when I use my dog as an example because it's the easiest example to myself. She looks like she is seriously the most hard dog ever. She looks like she's mean. But when you come up to her, she loves you and she kisses you and she'll probably kill you with love. That's the only thing she will ever do. So it is wrongful discrimination. And then in addition, there is the lack of evidence. There's not evidence that really shows that it provides a safer environment. There are things that show that there are safer environments when things are enforced. However, it is not drawn completely to breed-specific legislation. There are other factors that are played. So it is hard to draw evidence that this is actually very effective. In addition, there are similar, better options than breed-specific legislation. For example, there are leash laws that put into play, maybe a lot of beaches actually, in a lot of parks. A lot of places have the 6-foot leash limit rule. So having your animal on a leash has you in better control of your animal, as well as having other animals away. Not only could your animal be dangerous, your animal could be anxious, nervous. Other animals could be anxious or nervous. People could be anxious or nervous. So it really just gets you in a better control of your animal, even if they won't run away. For example, I always keep my animal on a leash. However, she will never run away. She will always stay by me. But I do it for the protection of her and the protection of others. You never know when a car is going to come. You never know when a wild animal is going to come out that your animal may specifically want to chase. You just never know what's going to happen. So there are leash laws that are put into place that help and are even more effective, they say, than breed-specific legislation, because when you have control of an animal, that is the better thing rather than banning them. In addition, there are vaccination requirements. I know that Genesee County has a requirement of getting the rabies vaccination, and then you have to also license your animal. You could do the 1-year or 3-year licenses, and I'm not here to talk about licenses, but it is also very important you ensure that your animal is safe, and you ensure that you have anything. If any time at any moment Genesee County Animal Control were to come knocking on my door for my animal, I have all the papers that I need to show them. I have everything that they need to show that she is healthy, and it's just very helpful. I know that there are articles I was reading that were talking about vaccination requirements all around. So in order to have a dog in the community, you would have to show that you have even simple Bordetella, which is usually only required if you are boarding your animals. So there are other options, whether they are really realistic or not. There are other options to keep this afloat. When there are animals that are not being adopted in the shelter, especially this comes in hand with pit bulls, not so much German Shepherds, where I am using the example of. But for pit bulls, it is very hard. There are many euthanization rates because they just simply cannot find homes and the shelters are filling up. So with breed-specific legislation communities, there are less adoptions for large dogs, and it just creates a lot of commotion. So, a long story short, breed identification is unreliable because there could be animals that are very nice and you're discriminating, or they could be very mean, like a Chihuahua or a small animal, and you are not discriminating because not only does the size matter, but the temperament matters. So, a quote I would like to leave you with is from the Humane Society of the United States. And the quote says, "There is no evidence that breed-specific laws reduce dog bites or attacks on people, and they divert resources from more effective animal control and public safety initiatives." So anything with the breed-specific laws, they are reducing dog bites, and they are saying that all this happens. However, according to the Humane Society of the United States, that is not true. There is no specific evidence that leads to the reduction of dog bites. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it very much.